The morning Sam woke up, the sky felt strangely heavy, quiet in a way that made her chest tighten. She stepped outside her small house, expecting to see Lee somewhere in the garden, doing what he always did, fixing something, preparing something, taking care of her without ever saying it out loud. But today, the garden was empty. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, breathing in the cool dawn air. Something felt off, as if the world was holding its breath. Then, behind her, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, familiar in a way she wished they weren't. Sam turned, and the man standing there made the blood in her veins turn cold. Her father. "Sam," he said, his voice carrying years of absence, regret, and something darker, authority. "I've come back for you." The world spun. Sam's breath caught. After all these years, after leaving her, after breaking her childhood into pieces, he dared to return now? "I don't need you," Sam whispered, trembling. "You left." He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned her face. "You look tired, thin. Are you all right?" His voice dropped lower. "Has Lee been treating you well?" Just hearing Lee's name made her heart flutter. Lee. Steady, patient, gentle Lee had become the quiet anchor of her chaos, but she didn't want her father's shadow touching that part of her life. "It's none of your business," she said. Her father exhaled, a long, heavy breath. "Sam, I didn't come here to take anything from you. I came because I need to tell you something. Something that will change everything about your life and Lee's." The fear in Sam's chest sharpened. She could hear her own heartbeat now, pounding like a warning. "What are you talking about?" she asked quietly. He looked her straight in the eyes, the way only a parent could, peeling back the layers she tried so hard to protect. "I don't want your excuses." Sam felt her fingers curl into fists. "This isn't an excuse," he said. "This is a confession." The word confession struck her like a blow to the ribs, because confessions meant secrets, and secrets never came without pain. In that moment, Sam didn't know yet that what her father was about to reveal would shatter everything she thought she knew about her past, and everything Lee believed about their future. Lee stood frozen in the doorway, his breath trapped somewhere between disbelief and fear. Across the small wooden table, Father Sam, older now, with strands of silver woven into his once black hair, kept his gaze lowered. The tension in the room pulsed softly, like a heartbeat neither of them fully owned. Sam sat beside her father, her hands tightly clasped together in her lap. She didn't dare look at Lee. She knew what he feared. She knew what he hoped, and she knew the truth she carried was heavier than either of them expected. "Lee," Father Sam finally spoke, his voice roughened by years of guilt, distance, and unspoken burdens. "Sit down. There are things I must tell you, things I should have said a long time ago." Lee pulled out the chair slowly, but he did not sit fully. He sat like a man prepared to stand again at the slightest sign of danger. His eyes flickered to Sam, searching, pleading, begging for reassurance. She offered none. She couldn't, not yet. Father Sam inhaled deeply. "You once asked me why I took Sam away, why I didn't let you know where she went. You thought I hated you or that I didn't want her near you." He paused, eyes softening with regret. "You were wrong." Lee's brows furrowed, anger, confusion, and longing converging in a storm that reflected years of torment. "I took Sam away," the father continued, "because she was in danger, and so were you." The words punched the air out of Lee's lungs. Sam closed her eyes. This was the part she dreaded the most. Father Sam's voice dropped. There was someone following her back then, someone obsessed, someone who believed Sam belonged to him. He clenched his fists. "I thought I could protect her myself. I thought disappearing was the only way." Lee leaned forward, voice low and trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?
I would have protected her. I know, Father Sam whispered, but you were young, hot-headed. I thought you would run straight toward danger. I was afraid you would die before you could save her. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Then Tusam reached out a trembling hand. Her voice cracked as she finally spoke. Lee, the person who was chasing me, he's back. Lee stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His eyes, once full of confusion, now blazed with one thing: cold, unwavering determination. Where is he? He demanded. Father Sam swallowed hard. Closer than you think. And for the first time in years, Lee understood. The true danger had never disappeared. It had simply been waiting. For a long moment, time stood still. The air outside was settling into the quiet of dusk, but inside the room, everything felt sharp, trembling, alive. Lee watched Sam sit down on the edge of the wooden bench, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. She wasn't crying, but her breath shook as if a storm lived beneath her ribs. Sam, whatever it is, just say it, Lee whispered, kneeling down in front of her. I'm here. Her eyes met his, soft, exhausted, but filled with something he hadn't seen in years. A kind of fear wrapped around hope, like someone standing at the door of a new future, unsure whether to open it. When Father came earlier, he didn't just return to visit. He came to tell me the truth about everything. Lee felt a chill tighten across his spine. The truth? She nodded. He told me why he left, why he disappeared, why he let me believe I had been abandoned. She swallowed hard. He thought he was protecting me from the danger he created in the past. Lee took her hands. Sam, none of that was your fault. She shook her head slowly. No, but there's more. Her voice thinned. He also knew something I've been trying to hide. Something about me. About us. Lee felt every pulse in his body slow. Tell me. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come out immediately. Instead, tears finally spilled, quiet, trembling, unstoppable. The first he had seen from her all day. Lee, I thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe back then. I thought staying close to you would only bring you more pain. You didn't hurt me, he said firmly, but she shook her head again, the tears falling faster. No, I hurt myself, because She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth as if the confession itself burned. Lee cupped her face gently. Sam, look at me. Say it. Her eyes lifted, shimmering like 1,000 quiet heartbreaks, and then she finally let the truth go. Lee, I never stopped loving you, not for a single day. Even when I ran, even when I thought I had lost everything, you were the only thing my heart held on to. The room went silent again, but this silence felt different. It was the kind that wraps around two people who finally stop running. Lee exhaled shakily, the weight of years dissolving in his chest. Sam, he whispered, voice breaking, that's all I ever wanted to hear. And he pulled her into his arms, not as someone saving her, not as someone afraid of losing her, but as a man finally holding the truth he had waited half a lifetime for.
The room fell silent after Father Sam's final words. It was as if the world outside had stopped spinning. No wind, no sound, only the weight of a truth that had taken too long to come home. Sam's breath trembled as she looked at the old man, her eyes searching his face for anything familiar, anything that echoed the father she had imagined her whole life. Why now? She whispered, her voice cracking under the heaviness in her chest. Why did you wait until everything was broken? Father Sam lowered his head. Because I was a coward, Sam. I thought staying away would protect you. Instead, I left you alone in the world I should have shielded you from. Lee stood beside her, quietly but firmly. He didn't speak, not yet. He knew this moment belonged to her, and for once, she wasn't the girl running from her past. She was the woman confronting it. "I cried for you," Sam said. "I hated you. I forgave you. And then I hated you again. I didn't know what to feel anymore." Her hands clutched the edge of the table, knuckles white. "And all this time, you were alive?" Father Sam's eyes shined with the tears he'd held back for years. "I deserve every ounce of your anger, but let me make this right, please." Sam exhaled shakily, tears slipping down her cheeks. She felt Lee's hand gently touch her back, warm, grounding. She leaned into that warmth, drawing strength. And then she spoke words even she didn't expect. "Before I decide anything, you need to hear my truth too." She turned fully toward Lee. Her heart pounded, her lip trembled, but she forced the words out. "Lee, I love you. I've loved you even when I was afraid of love. Afraid of losing people, afraid of opening my heart again." She swallowed hard. "You stayed when I disappeared. You searched for me when I broke. You protected me even when I pushed you away." Lee's breath caught in his throat. His eyes softened as if the world had finally given him something he'd been waiting years to receive. "So," she continued, wiping her tears, "whatever happens with my father, whatever comes next, I want you with me. I want us to face it together." For the first time, Lee stepped forward, cupping her face in both hands. "Sam, you never had to face anything alone," he whispered. Father Sam watched them, his daughter finally finding the safety he had failed to give her. And for the first time in years, he smiled. A broken family had begun to heal because of one confession that changed everything.